There's nothing quite like watching a fan base slowly realize the game they've waited for years to get their grubby little hands on is, well, garbage. It is, for lack of a better term, sometimes just emotionally devastating. And we're not talking sad stories, heartstring-pulling stuff here, no, we're talking about pure, bold new directions that drive straight off the edge of a cliff or cash grab type, nosedive style disappointment. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx we're talking about 10 games that made an entire fan base cry. Starting off with number 10, it's Metal Gear Survive. First, there was the rocky production that was Metal Gear Solid 5, a game that is known today just as much for what it's missing as for what it has. It's a pretty great game though, and it's a testament to the people making it. After the very public breakup between Kojima and Konami, the two bereaved parties went their separate ways. Kojima went on to found Kojima Productions and got to lead his best life doing what he does best, hanging out with famous people and making crazy Strand-type games. Death Stranding was pretty divisive when it came out, but it's now considered by many to be innovative and a revolutionary classic. Konami, on the other hand, thought, what rhymes with 5? Why, survive. Metal Gear Survive. I'm kidding. I actually have no idea what thought process went into the creation of this one, but it might as well have been that. It does I rhyme with Metal Gear Solid 5 quite a bit. Kind of more of an expansion pack than a proper follow-up. It's not terrible. It's built on the bones of Metal Gear Solid 5. There's a baseline of quality there, but it's a game that just feels completely out of pace with the rest of the series. It's a low-cost cash-in designed to squeeze a little more money out of the project, and that's, I mean, the extracting money premise is especially obvious. You ever thought, hey, what would it be like if I had to pay for another save slot? Metal Gear Survive had the answer to that question. The game was absolutely hated back when it was released. It was seen as a failure by Konami, but it does have its defenders these days. There are not many of them, of course, but they are out there. And fair enough, again, the game, when taken entirely by itself without any of the context of existing as part of a legendary video game series made by one of the greats, released not long after he had a very public breakup fight thing with the company that owns the IP. If you can look at it separate from that, it's not terrible. It's not good, but the fan anger wasn't so much about what the game was, but what it represented. It was a Metal Gear game without any creativity or vision behind it, and it is that. You cannot call it anything other than that. What you can do, though, is do us a huge favor and click subscribe, because believe it or not, most of the people watching this video, most of the people who regularly watch gameranx are not subscribed to gameranx, and it really helps us out, not only with the algorithm, but just knowing that there's going to be an audience for the stuff that we make. Of course, it's a big help for us, but we kind of hope it's also a big help for you, making sure that you get more of what you want to see. Either way, we thank you so much for clicking subscribe. Let's get back to the video. At number 9 is Kerbal Space Program 2. You really can't help but feel bad for the Kerbal fan base over this one. The original game was so novel, there's just nothing out there quite like it. The commitment to realism with the physics model makes it not just a fun game, but a legitimately educational one. It's a rare piece of edutainment that almost feels like the educational part is kind of just a side effect, and the game itself is very fun to play. I'm not sure if it's meant as edutainment, and that might be why it works that way. The sequel's situation was always rocky, though. Even from the start, it was being made by a new development team, and after years of delays, the game did finally come out into early access at an absurd $50 price point, and it was clear this was not going to be the game fans of the original really wanted. And of course, what they wanted was a game that was more polished, with more integrated economic and management features, and more things to do once you get out in space. All they really had to do with a Kerbal sequel was make it bigger and better, like start from the bones of Kerbal 1. But obviously, new developer means either you take the code and you learn what the hell it is in order to build on top of it, or you just start brand new. And they did the latter. It was bare bones too. Their early access release was basically supposed to start at being Kerbal 1, and then they'd add stuff like space colonies, interstellar travel, and actual multiplayer. It was a lot of ambitious promises, but only ever got small updates through 2023. Then the hammer came down in May of 2024, and that's when fans really had reason to be upset. It was never confirmed. I mean, never. Even now, we don't know exactly what happened, but back then it was reported the studio currently working on Kerbal 2 was getting shut down. Take-Two CEO, who owned Private Division and the game's developer Intercept Games, denied the studio was getting shut down, to be fair. And what actually happened was that the Private Division brand and all its associated properties were sold to some unknown investor. The game was never updated again, and there appears to be no movement whatsoever on it. And I think at this point, it's safe to say the developers are gone, and right now, they're just selling a $50 game on Steam that will never be finished. All this business buffoonery is basically what killed Kerbal Space Program's future as a franchise. Hard to imagine any series coming back from this. The whole thing has been devastating to watch because it's just pointless. The whole thing was a big waste of time for all involved. 8 is Payday 3. The thing about Payday 3 is that it's not a universally hated game. There are people who want to like it, but the disastrous launch and consistently terrible post-launch support eroded whatever enthusiasm the fan base could have, not just for this game, but for the series. When 2-bit Payday ripoffs like Crime Boss, Rock-A City are making fun of you openly and proudly, you kind of know your formerly respected series has fallen off. Payday developer Starbreeze just seems to exist in this endless state of crisis. Fans either love them or hate them depending on the day, but for the most part, Payday 2 worked, because it was a good game. The third game actually is also a good game and has some legitimate innovation, but it fell short of what people expected as a real follow-up for the series. It's kind of more Payday 2.5 with worse monetization. It also had endless server issues, and it took way too long for serious issues to get fixed. By the point that they were fixed, it didn't matter. The fans gave up on the game. They all pretty much went back to Payday 2. You'd think after a few years they would have improved, but they really haven't. It's still the same mess of a game as when it first launched, but with a dwindling player base. At this point, I'm not sure there's any chance of salvaging Payday 3. That ship has sailed, unfortunately. Starbreeze is still, I guess, going to try, because their financial future depends on the game succeeding, but I don't know how. I feel like they have to do a total overhaul, or they have to combine Payday 3 and Payday 2 into one thing, and it has to be flawless. I don't know. I just don't know. I would like for that actually to be what happens. I think a Payday 2 and 3 merging is probably the best case scenario. I don't know that we'll get that, though. That's obviously wishful thinking on my part. At number 7 is Shenmue 3. For a lot of Sega fans, the first Shenmue is a really special game. It's essentially the progenitor to the entire open world genre, but its own idiosyncratic thing as well. It's a game that to this day is still kind of unlike anything else.
Nozomi told me you had words with the guys driving the black car.
No, I don't remember.
They might have been the ones who murdered my father.
Your father?
Other than its own highly regarded sequel, Yu Suzuki had a really ambitious goal for the series. It was supposed to be a 4 or 5 game series, epic in scope, but they were only ever managed to get 2 parts out before the series went into hibernation, I guess is the best way to put it. Most assumed the story would never be concluded, that Ryu would never get the chance to face off against Long Di, the man who killed his father, and by the 2010s, they just accepted the series would never be concluded. Then, in 2015, it was revealed that Yu Suzuki was back making Shenmue 3 using a crowdfunding campaign as a means of generating support. Fans finally had something to be excited about again, and the actual game finally launched in 2019. It was almost surreal getting an actual Shenmue 3 after all these years. It was like a dream come true for a lot of fans. Then, of course they played it. And to say that people found the game to be a disappointment would be a massive understatement. Not saying everybody hates it. A lot of people did appreciate what they were trying to do here in capturing the vibes of the original series, but for fans looking for some kind of progress on the story in particular, wanting to see that resolved for nearly 2 decades, maybe 2 decades? I don't know, that doesn't happen at all. It basically rehashes the story beats from the first 2 games, and that's it.
Is that all you're made of?
He makes no quest progress, like he's not anywhere closer to avenging his father. I'm not exaggerating. Nothing of consequence happens in Shenmue 3. Obviously, the games aren't just about the plot, but after all this time, you'd think it'd be nice to get some kind of resolution. But no, the entire game is basically a side chapter created to hopefully get enough interest for them to get a Shenmue 4 made that would be the real sequel, which is probably not going to happen because Shenmue 3, I don't know, it follows this really weird video game blueprint that I've seen too much lately, where they make a kind of crappy game that's meant to somehow wet your whistle for a better game. And I don't understand why they think that's going to work. It never has. It hasn't worked a single time. And Shenmue 3 ended up feeling like the developers were intentionally taking advantage of their most devoted fans. And I can't blame them for that, because it does kind of feel correct. No wonder they were upset. And number 6 is Paper Mario Sticker Star. If you're outside the Nintendo fandom, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about here. But if you're inside the Nintendo fandom, you've heard so much about this game, you're probably sick of it. What could be in a Paper Mario game that makes fans so upset that it's still a sore subject more than 13 years after it came out? It's actually pretty simple. Paper Mario / Nintendo fans want them to make a new Paper Mario 1000-Year Door game. But the developers at Intelligent Systems and their overseers at Nintendo did not do that. Infamously, this game is most closely associated with Nintendo's much stricter brand guidelines at the time, where they didn't let the developers make new characters or alter existing character designs in any way, which led to this game being branded the most boring and generic Paper Mario game. In previous games, the dev teams were allowed to cut loose the Mario universe, and that led to some of the most interesting games in the entire Nintendo catalog. 1000-Year Door is a really highly regarded game for a reason, and not just because of the gameplay. People legitimately really liked the story, the writing, and the characters. In Sticker Star, they were severely hampered in what they could or could not do. The gameplay is very divisive as well. People just do not like the sticker mechanic, and the fact that battles don't award you experience, making them essentially pointless, is not fun. It's just a strangely designed and relatively bland entry in the Paper Mario series, which sucks because this series used to be known for how off-the-wall creative it was. And this is kind of how people felt about Nintendo in general during this time. Many of the games were playing it safe and trying to force all their devs to stick to very strict style guides that they couldn't deviate from. The Switch era was very different. They started to get a lot more creative and experimental again, so it wasn't all bad forever, but for a lot of Nintendo fans, Paper Mario Sticker Star is kind of the poster child for this particular era of Nintendo games. They were safe, they were boring, they were reliant on not fun gimmicks and undercooked gameplay. At number 5 is Civilization 7. It is expected for a Civilization to go through some growing pains. With every new entry they come out, the fanbase complains, and after a few months of patching, the eventual expansion packs come out, and the game finally gets good. This happened with Civ 5 and Civ 6, and it was, expected to happen with Civ 7. But we're 6 months in, and the turnaround, it has not materialized. At this point, it's unclear if it's ever going to. This might be the first actual full-on flop Civilization game. It's another game that's not entirely hated, but also far from loved, with a review score of mixed from Steam that has barely moved at all since the game launched back in February. They've put out a few updates that do improve the game, like the recent naval update, but there's so much fundamentally wrong with the core game, it's hard to imagine them ever fully fixing it. They try to do something different here with the ages system, system, which is something I can respect to a certain extent, but the way it works just isn't something that Civ fans really want. The idea of splitting your average Civ game into 3 separate minigames, it's not a terrible one, but the way it's implemented, where you play as entirely different civilizations when you age up and it drops you into completely different maps that you're essentially starting from scratch, it's bizarre. And what carries over and what doesn't between ages is vague and confusing. The whole system, it makes the game more frustrating. It's different, but different doesn't always mean bad, but it also doesn't always mean good or even better. Tons of fans just do not like it, and at least right now the developers are committed to it, but they're not going to be able to reverse course and turn this game back into a standard Civilization game. They have to keep the ages. It's built in. I mean, maybe it's possible to still save the game and make it better, but right now the future of Civ 7 doesn't look great. At number 4, it's Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. If Star Wars fans are good at anything, it's complaining. But in this case, and in, a lot of other cases, to be honest, they're justified. They've gotten good at complaining because they've been given reasons to. But okay, so take any popular game and give it a half-assed remaster. You're gonna upset a lot of fans. But this one is especially bad because you can still get Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2, and the games are still good, and they're pretty easy to get running on most PCs even now. These games should be really easy to port over, making them playable on modern consoles, bring in some new servers, add some quality of life, you're set. This is a remaster that should be a no-brainer. Instead, somehow, it ended up being a 70-gigabyte disaster. This game had all kinds of performance issues. It allegedly stole from modders, and of course, the game's file size was absurd, especially because they really didn't do a lot to the original games. It was a pretty bare-bones as hell remaster, and somehow they found a way to screw that up royally. Which sucks because the two games are still a lot of fun. They hold up surprisingly well and could have gotten the proper, respectful remakes they deserve instead of this half-baked attempt. And number 3 is City Skylines 2. This one still stings. Not quite as bad as Kerbal Space Program 2, but not far off. We're not 2 years removed from the abysmal launch of the highly anticipated City Skylines 2, and the game still has not made any significant improvements. They did recently launch the Tiny Bridges and Ports DLC that adds something to the game, but we're 2 years in, and this still feels like a beta, not a full-price $50 game. Not that $50 is the worst price now, but still, at least it is still getting updated, even if those updates are kind of incremental. It sucks, though, because the first City Skylines was something so many people wanted, a proper successor to the SimCity franchise, and the first game, it's still great, but a sequel could have been a lot better. It could have been the dream city builder, but for whatever reason, the developers just couldn't capture the magic in the bottle again. City Skylines 2 was a real mess when it came out. Super buggy, riddled with performance problems, and didn't even look much better than the first, while missing a lot of major features introduced in the first expansions. It was, and still is, a lesser game. At least the developers are supporting it, they're trying, but even at this point, it feels a bit like there's no future for this one. You have to remember that hype, at least among management game fans. It was huge. Skylines 2 could have been the SimCity 2000 of the 2020s. It could have completely revitalized the genre. Instead, it just fell flat on its face. Right at the get-go, the starting line, just the starting pistol was shot, and they just fell flat on their face. They've been slowly walking to the finish line for like 2 years now. Maybe someday we'll get the game Skylines 2 could have been, but after 2 years, it doesn't feel like we're closer to getting there. At number 2 is Dead Rising 4. The first 2 Dead Rising games managed to build up a small but dedicated fan base who were all in on whatever weird directions the series would go in, as long as it had 2 things. 1, the time limit, which was divisive, but for fans, the defining element of the experience, and 2, the psychos, the boss encounters against humans who have gone off the deep end. It might not sound that important, but they're an essential part of the secret sauce that makes the games work. So what does Dead Rising 4 do? Well, gets rid of the time limit, which makes the thing feel more like a generic open world game. They essentially replaced the psychos with much less fun, much less creative, much less interesting encounters against slightly enhanced normal enemies. All the flashiness of those bosses from the other games is just gone, replaced with generic military baddies who leave no impression whatsoever. The sad thing about Dead Rising 4 is that, as bad as it is, it could have been worse. The developers originally wanted to take it in an entirely new direction. They wanted to make a grim and serious zombie game that had more in common with The Last of Us. Like, they wanted to get rid of all the campiness and humor that makes Dead Rising Dead Rising. Capcom, of course, balked at the idea and forced them to make something more in line with the rest of the series, but production issues and the tight deadline they were given meant that the release version of Dead Rising 4 was missing a lot of the features normally associated with these games, and fans were not happy. And that's putting it mildly. Removing the time limit was a deliberate and stupid decision by the devs, but the loss of the psychos was simply because they ran out of time. For fans, the series was already on the rocks after Dead Rising 3, so they really had to knock it out of the park with the 4th game to bring a lot of lapsed Frank West fans back, and they didn't. They didn't even get Frank West right. They completely rebooted his character. Nothing about the game feels like a proper continuation. It's just an extremely generic, forgettable zombie game wearing Dead Rising's skin. And finally, at number 1, Metroid Other M. I cannot think of a game that made a fan base lose their minds like this. It's a game that was deliberately designed to be as annoying as possible to a Metroid fan. In any other circumstance, maybe that would be audacious. There are provocative games that have managed to pull off this trick. Metal Gear Solid 2, for example. But Metroid Other M ain't no MGS2. You might look at this game now and wonder what's the big deal. And yeah, with games like Metroid Dread and Metroid Prime 4, the series is doing just fine. But back in 2010, when this game came out, that was not the case. The last normal Metroid game was 8 years old at that point, and the most recent Metroid Prime game was seen by some fans as a bit of a disappointment. A big reason this game got so much hate at the time wasn't just because of the gameplay, but because of what it represented. Many fans saw it as the death of the entire franchise. Now, we know that's not the case, but at the time, who could have known? How could you know? It's not possible to have known. It seemed like the series was dead in the water after Other M, though. This one was just, it's frustrating because in theory it should be great. It's Metroid made by Team Ninja, with the series' original creator back at the helm, and they're taking it in a weird Metal Gear Solid inspired direction. Like, there are good ideas here. The environmental design is good, could have worked in a proper exploration-based Metroid game, for example, but everything else is just a mess. The story is non-stop, aggressively terrible.
Thanks to the hyper beam, which was given to me somehow by the baby, I laid Mother Brain to waste. And the explosion that followed destroyed Planet Zebes, along with the remains of Mother Brain, the space pirates, and my long-standing nemesis, Ridley, and the baby.
Come on, Samus. Let's go next door.
The control scheme involves pointing the Wiimote at the screen to fire missiles. It's bizarre, it's uncomfortable, I don't like it. Samus's constant narration, it's mind-numbing.
Never again would I encounter the baby. Never. The finality of it struck me once again.
combat dodging can be spammed constantly so you never die, then I mentioned the story is terrible, because it's terrible. And it's constantly interrupting the gameplay. It's a frustrating game because all the elements of something great, they're there, and you can almost see it in the post-game, which is actually the fun part of the game, but the rest of it's a mess. Fans thought this game killed the franchise, and while they were wrong, and we're all thankful they're wrong, the game is pretty terrible, and they were right about that. What do you think? Leave us a comment, let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.